Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Travis. We're here at AvidMax for another Tying Tuesday. Today we're going to be going over chironomids. The pattern I got in store for you guys today is a variation on a pattern that's called the rusted duck chironomid. Got it in the vise right here. It's a two-tone chironomid with a little bit of dubbing behind the bead and a little bit of a white gill to represent those breeders that have up front. So without further ado, let's get started. In the vise, I have a size 14 TMC 2302. You can use a straight eye if you want. I use both. I don't really think it matters on how it fishes. Sometimes I think I prefer the down eye a little bit more. I think it keeps the eye away from the gills a little bit while you're trying to feed the line through the hook. To get started, I have a 2.0 millimeter tungsten bead on that size 14. We're gonna throw some Antron yarn on there. Oh, try to get that in focus. I'm gonna use Antron yarn for the gills. Behind me, you guys might be able to see a little bit. I got this chest that I use to transport my materials. Holds all my spools, holds my vise, holds everything I need. You can, if you guys are interested in something like that, search up Twisted Feather Chests on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. Hit up the guy, his name is Tim. He makes these all by hand. You can choose the type of wood you want, the style you want, all that good stuff. So I just put about 3 or 4 wraps of thread right here to get started. You don't want to go too far down because you don't want this sticking out of the bead. It's going to cause a lumpy body. So you want this fully covered by the bead. I go 1, 2 pinch wraps and adjust that back on top. I'm just going to go one more time. I'm going to trim off my excess over here. You want to get that as close as you can. With this synthetic materials, having a nice pair of sharp scissors really helps. Got these Dr. Slicks here. Pick them up at AvidMax. Cover up that butt end right here and then work your way towards the front. Just a couple more wraps right to where that eye starts to straighten down. Now we're going to take a couple wraps in front of that Antron yarn. You're going to fold it over. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just to help prop that up. And we're going to take our whip finish tool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead and trim off your thread. Just using a 14-aught Veevus here. This is what we're going to use for part of the body. We're going to use a different thread to start the body though here in a second. Go ahead and push that bead up. If you notice, there's nothing sticking out here. That's very key to making sure you keep that and maintain that smooth body. So I'm going to grab my UTC 70 in yellow. I'm going to get started. 1, 2, 3 wraps. Go ahead and trim off that excess. I'm going to take some small ultra wire in gold. I'm going to go ahead and tie that in. I'm going to tie this in on the side facing me. And something I like to do personally is I like to keep this right in the middle of that hook. So not on top of the hook and not on the bottom of the hook. You want to tie it in on the middle and try to keep it as straight as possible because it will affect the body. Just touching wraps all the way down, trying to maintain a nice smooth body. The biggest thing I'm looking for in my chironomids It's a very nice smooth body with a subtle taper. So I'm maintaining that wire perfectly in the middle of the hook on the side facing me. You can do it on the far side, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Go all the way down to where that starts to bend. You can go touching wraps all the way back up. So to get my thread started on the way back up, I'm going to flatten it out, spin it counterclockwise. If you're left-handed, I guess you don't really have to worry about that too much. Touching wraps all the way back up to the bead. And this is where the first part of the taper comes in. We're going to wrap all the way back to the halfway point. Touching wraps. It's about right there. I'm going to flatten my thread again. Now, one thing I do in a lot of my chironomids is some sort of color change. How much it triggers hits, I'm not too sure. I think it looks really nice in my opinion. And if you look at these natural chironomids in the water, sometimes they do have a natural kind of color shift on the way up. So trying to come up with your own ways to mimic that, or you know, you can also do some attractor kind of styles with it as well. Now that we worked all the way back up to the bead, I'm gonna go ahead and trim this. I trim this just past the eye, and we can fluff that out later when we get done. I'm gonna go ahead and whip finish this color. I heard somewhere once upon a time when I first started that if you have to whip finish a fly multiple times, you know you're onto something good. So I don't know if that's true or not, but this pattern definitely produces a lot of fish. So here we're going in with that 14-aught Veevus in brown. I use 14-aught. You can use bigger if you want, but this 14-aught helps keep it slim since we already had another thread on there. And the 14-aught also blends out very nice. So we're gonna go touching wraps again. Right till we get to where that thread is about aligned with that point of the hook. Go ahead and flatten that out, and this is where the color shift comes in. So pay attention close here. You're gonna go spaced wraps, 1, 2, 3. Now you're gonna go in the middle of those, 1, 2, 3, and now you can start your touching wraps again. And this is really going to come in all together once we put our UV resin on to seal things up. It's really going to blend in nice. And I always just do a quick 1-2 whip finish as a half hitch because it's easier. You have the tool, right? You might as well use it. So you can half hitch if you want, but I think it does the same thing. About the halfway point, I start to slightly let my wire wraps get a little bit bigger. And I usually shoot for about 8 to 9 segments on each fly, regardless of what size it is. So if you can identify how many wraps of wire you like, you just keep that the same for each size and it'll keep it relatively proportionate. So even on a size 18 you can still do 9 reps because the segments are going to be smaller on a size 18 than they are on a size 14. Here I'm going to just do the same thing. Just put in a little half hitch or whip finish, whatever you want to call it. Throw my bobbin on my wrist. I'm going to go in with my UV resin before I put on that dubbing so I don't gum up the dubbing afterwards with the UV resin. Here we have Solarez Bone Dry. You can also find that here at AvidMax. I like this Bone Dry because it's super thin. It's almost like water. This does a couple things. It keeps your nice wire work in place. I've had a couple people argue me, oh, you don't need UV resin if you tie in your wire right. I'm like, no, you don't, but it does prolong the life of your wire, regardless of whether you tie it in right or wrong. And it's also going to give you a nice sheen to the body, which if you look at these chironomids, these naturals, even after you pull them out of the water, they're very shiny. It's just going to make everything a little bit more durable as well. Now if you tie a lot, you want to try not to look directly into your UV light because it will affect your eyesight in the future. Next, I'm going to go in with that dubbing collar. This is Spectra brown dubbing. Let's see if I can get the color code off of that for you. It's color code 29. You can also find that here at AvidMax. This is a nice fine eye stub, and you don't need a whole lot. On a size 18 you need even less. Just going to get a nice dubbing noodle. You can use a dubbing wax if you like, but I like my dubbing to look a little bit buggy, and I find that dubbing wax will sometimes make too fine of a noodle. I'm just going to go in with a couple wraps behind the bead here. And then here's where a lot of durability comes into my flies. Is I always whip finish 2 to 3 times. And so now when this starts coming apart, you can trim off 3 times before this actually starts coming undone. We're going to take our fingers, I'm just going to fluff up that Antron yarn a little bit. And there you have it. So before we end, I want to talk a little bit about how to fish this pattern. I'm usually fishing this under an indicator with floating fly line. This is usually going to be anywhere from a foot off the bottom to a foot under the surface, depending on the day. When these are actively hatching, I like these to be closest to the surface of the water. Now, on days out here on the still water in Colorado, when the hatch is really intense, you can almost watch it rain upside down in water, and that's actually bugs coming up and rising to the surface. So if you can start to figure out whether that's a Calabatus or a Chironomid, you can start to figure out which one is going to suit you best. Thanks for watching.